Hurricane right over by you, Sonya.
Yeah, this is Jose.
Jose's out there.
So we've actually got 3, and then behind your back, Katia and the Gulf. So that's going to make landfall in eastern Mexico.
Yeah.
Not a concern for the U.S. Jose expected to stay out in the Atlantic, and we'll be watching it. The model's kind of hinting it maybe could head toward Bermuda. Again, something we'll watch.
Well, and
because it's in the Atlantic, but
I think the models are going to have a tough time because we're talking about a Category 5 hurricane that's really throwing a wrench into all the forecast models.
Yes.
And so they're kind of ignoring Jose over there. We'll see what happens after Irma comes our way.
Right. One storm at a time.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to talk about the big one. That's Irma. And it is huge. We've seen the comparisons to Andrew. It looks like it's about double in size of what Andrew was.
I saw that on Twitter, which is pretty amazing. And that was 92.
Yep. Last Category 5 to make landfall in the United States. So it's been over 25 years because that one was toward the middle and end of August.
Right.
So it's been over 25 years now that Category 5 made landfall in the United States. This one's a possibility.
Yeah. We hope it's not a Category 5.
Right.
We hope it doesn't make landfall. But
honestly, not much is slowing this down at this point.
No.
And if you look very closely between here and when you go all the way up to Florida, there's nothing but warm water in the in between there.
And a few little islands.
A little. Right.
So the Turks and Caicos are there?
Yeah. It's pretty tough to pick out.
Yeah, hard to look, yeah. I know it's been nearing the Turks and Caicos all day.
Yeah.
And then the Bahamas, Cuba,
so
Hispaniola. Can't really see it. It's covered by satellite. But they're kind of on the best case scenario, the side of the storm.
For them.
Hispaniola.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's not making landfall there. I think
right.
Other than those small islands, the Turks and Caicos, Bahamas, I think the next landfall for this storm is going to be its first major landfall of any significance to land. And that'll be South Florida.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately for them.
Not looking good for Florida today, especially with that latest run, or the latest track that came in at 5 o'clock.
Well, and the problem is this storm has a lot of momentum behind it. It's big, and just imagine an 18-wheeler driving across ice and trying to make a right-hand turn at about 40 miles an hour.
Right.
It doesn't do it right away, and it's going to slide a little bit. And I think that's what we're seeing today in the computer models. They're kind of accounting for that slide across Florida.
Right. It's hard. Yeah, and we've been seeing, like you said, that trend.
Yeah.
Kind of that westward trend.
When I told you yesterday, it was so hard for me to try to wrap my head around
because it went
that right-hand turn.
Right.
So now it's looking a little more gradual.
A little more, and a little more realistic, maybe.
Right. And then eventually off to due north. So there's our hurricane. We'll take a look at the computer models, and there they are. And they're clustered pretty close together as it's off to the south of Florida here and near Cuba. So it's clustered together pretty tightly. And notice where most of those lines point. South Florida. South Florida, Miami. Almost all of them. Maybe a few outliers out to the east and maybe a few outliers out to the west. And that's why we call them outliers, because they're outside of the scope of most of the lines. And
we look for the agreement.
Yes, that's what we're concentrating on, South Florida. Terrible for them.
And that's one thing that has been consistent, again, whether it makes a landfall or not. But again, it's been very close to the Florida coast. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah.
So whether it stays just off the coast, kind of rides up the coast, or moves inland. So that's why we keep comparing the track to Matthew.
Yeah, and we've seen that with Matthew. It tracked all the way up pretty much the entire length of Florida.
Never made landfall until it got into the low country.
And it was only about 30, 40 miles off the coast at times, especially around Cape Canaveral up towards St. Augustine. Yeah, and they had some really damaging impacts in St. Augustine. They may still be cleaning up some of the mess that Matthew did last year.
Yeah.
So
I actually just saw one of my friends in St. Augustine. They boarded their house. They're at a family member's house in North Carolina. They're like, we're not after Matthew.
That's so funny. We're
and
always
she's a former meteorologist.
Well, we're always joking with each other that we're so similar. And yes, I have a friend who's in Ormond Beach, a little south of there. And she, after Matthew last year, she said, forget it, board up, and we're out. It's
not worth it. And you know what? She mentioned it, and because she's a meteorologist, and we've been saying this, if you don't feel comfortable, whether it's a category 1, 2, 3, whatever, if you don't feel comfortable, stay and go. And you might as well go now, especially now the schools have been canceled. A lot of people don't have to work.
Yep.
A lot of the daycares are going to start to close, I'm sure. I know our daycare is closed for tomorrow. So yeah, if you're not comfortable staying, you might as well go. Go somewhere, have a good time, spend time with loved ones.
Right.
Try to make the best of the situation.
Exactly. And there's still a lot of uncertainty as the storm comes in our direction.
Yeah,
we're very, very confident. I'd say we're probably about 90% sure that South Florida is going to get hit with a major hurricane.
Yeah, they're going to get major impacts. So they get a landfall or not, that's, I think, where we're pretty confident, but major impacts regardless because the size of the storm.
Right, but then
solely that.
Then our differences start to arise in the models, and some stay off to the west, some stay off to the east, but notice the trend, it's up toward the low country.
So we had a question, where was the safe place to evacuate? And we keep getting this question. We just keep saying, we're going to see impacts because this is a large storm. But again, the further west you go, you get away from the most deadly impact, which is the storm surge, which again, we still don't know until we see the track.
Well,
so these impacts are just highly dependent on the track and the intensity.
A friend of mine on Facebook earlier, he said, oh, so Charlotte isn't a good place to go. And I said, there is no good place to go. There's only better places than where we are, because you see all these lines here? From Alabama to North Carolina, there will be impacts. So if you're planning on going to North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, even eastern Tennessee, you're going to feel the impacts of this storm, whether it's just rain or whether it's rain and wind.
Or a tornado threat.
Yeah.
We're gonna, and again, just solely based on the size of the storm. But again, it goes back to your comfort zone. I mean, the storm surge is scary.
Yes. And deadly.
And deadly. And so you have to think about, if you live especially close to the coast, I mean, my dad's right off of a creek. So we are watching it. And my family knows. I know your wife's the same way. I mean, when I give them the sign to go, they're going to go.
Absolutely. Tidal creeks, those are going to be the spots. So we're still determining that, but there is no good place to evacuate to. There are only better places to get away from the coast.
Exactly. Somebody had a question about the storm surge. So the storm surge is just simply the water being pushed ashore by the force of the winds. And the storm surge can change depending on the category of the storm.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of basically the easiest way to explain it. You can elaborate.
And where it makes landfall. So let's say this line is where the landfall is. So off to the north of that, that's where the storm surge is. So let's say this is the Savannah River. The storm surge is going to come into Hilton Head. It's going to come into Beaufort. It's going to come into places like that. This is just a hypothetical scenario. But then places south of that, down towards Savannah, down toward Brunswick, Georgia, you've got an offshore flow. So the surge is not going to come there. It's north of the center of the storm where it makes landfall.
So think about this counterclockwise rotation here. So again, north of the center, you're going to get that water pushing on shore. South of it, it's moving away from the shore. So so that's why landfall, I mean, we just keep saying it, but I mean, that's why we just can't pin down the impacts until we have a better idea of where or if there will be a landfall.
And best case scenario for us is probably if it rides up over Florida and just continues to weaken the whole way.
And that's kind of where the center of the track is right now. And it has it going from a Category 4 to a Category 1. So again.
But I remember storms like that as well that had huge impacts on us that moved across Florida. Charlie, which came on shore in Punta Gorda, and then it crossed over Florida, and it made its way back to South Carolina and had a landfall up around Myrtle Beach. And then Hurricane Francis, which wasn't even a hurricane at the time, it was a tropical storm, center passed through Atlanta, but every little feeder band that came in off the Atlantic Ocean associated with Francis had supercell thunderstorms in it. And when I was working up in the PD, we had over 20 tornado warnings in one afternoon and evening. So that could be a real possibility that we're dealing with. So nothing is out of the scope of possibilities.
And that's why you can't, people keep saying, well, if it's a major hurricane, it's going to be worse. But I mean, anything from a tropical storm to a Category 5, I mean, it just depends on the impacts and how you're looking at it. Matthew was only a 1, and some people just had catastrophic damage. Do you know where this is from?
It's Fort Lauderdale. So this is one of our earth cams, and We saw a little bit of lightning there, and this is actually some of the outflow with Hurricane Irma. And I saw the outflow over top of Florida, so around Fort Lauderdale, we're seeing some of those thunderstorms bubbling up now. Not exactly associated with the storm, but kind of a precursor to what's going to approach. So there it is. We've got that. And also, as we go ahead and take a look at what to watch with Irma, it's the model trends, not the exact, well, the model, this 6 hours says this 6 hours it says that. You're going to be waffling back and forth all the time. So monitor the trend, not the exact model. There will be jogs in that forecast track, and we saw a jog
to the west
from 11 o'clock to 5 o'clock with the National Hurricane Center.
And I have to be honest, I didn't particularly see that coming. I knew that the models had trended westward, but again, we're all really leery at this point to jump on board with one model run. So I was, you know, a little bit surprised to see that. I mean, certainly a little bit better news for us.
But we're still in the cone.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
And also what's really gonna play into what we get is the interaction with Florida, because that's going to impact the intensity, and it could even deflect it one way or the other. So that would impact where it's going to track to, and there will be impacts in the southeast at this point. It looks like Florida's going to get the worst of it.
Right. So I guess somebody had a question about the best place, Atlanta, Charlotte, or Charleston. You know, at this point, probably the farther west. I mean, yeah, you're still going to have the rain and the, but it's just really kind of hard to tell. I think either way, Charlotte or Atlanta, kind of any of the scenarios we're looking at this point, they're going to see the heavy rain, possibly some breezy conditions, and the tornado threat is possible. So I think that there, again, Charleston, I mean, we're still looking at the possibility for some storm surge, again, depending on the exact track.
And that's, I just got the question. The question is,
oh, you did?
When are we going to know more? And I can detail it right here with the tropical tracker. As we track our Category 5 hurricane, there it goes up toward Cuba, and it's still a Category 4 storm. Hopefully it does weaken as we head toward Saturday. And then that is the point where we'll know a lot more as we go from Saturday into Sunday, and it makes that turn to the north. And that's going to determine whether it's still over water. If it's over land, that's when we really know, and that's when we'll start to pin down, hey, here's your tornado threat, here's your storm surge. We can tell you about how many feet it's going to be and where we think the landfall is going to be.
And when we saw the first part of that cone, did you see how narrow it was? So once we get into Saturday, Sunday, Monday, we're getting closer to when we're going to see those impacts. That cone's going to start to narrow as well.
Because the cone right here is 175 miles across.
Right,
so
and then it goes up to what, 225?
225 once we get out to here.
225.
But notice the entire low country is engulfed.
Yep, in that cone.
Yes.
And that's what we want people to focus on. And yes, we're showing the scenarios, and we're going to show those in a minute. But again, focus on the fact that we're still in that danger zone. What the danger will be, we don't know.
Yep. And somebody asked the question, when will I roll up my sleeves?
He doesn't. He's
Have
not a
you
sleeve
ever
roller.
seen me roll up my sleeves?
It's too chilly in here.
Yeah, I'd be in my T-shirt before I'd roll up my sleeves.
Now, we may be rolling up our sleeves if we lose power during the storm.
And that's a possibility.
It's hot in here.
That's a possibility.
And, you know, and widespread power outages. And so I go back to that. You know, if you're uncomfortable with losing power, go.
Yeah.
You know, because widespread power outages are pretty likely.
But that also doesn't guarantee that you're not going to lose power where you evacuate to, because look at this cone. I mean, and like we said earlier.
Right, so Charlotte's in that cone. I mean, so it's literally just west of Raleigh.
Yeah. The impacts are going to be felt over a large area, and that's why we don't want to get into the specifics just yet, because we want to give you the specifics when we know them. We just don't know them right at this point.
And that's why I think it's best if you have family or friends, even though you're going to get some impacts, at least you're with people you love and getting to spend some time with them. So it's not like you're just having to evacuate because of a storm. Kind of a little vacation, so to speak.
Now, I like this graphic that you put together here, Sonia, because this shows the National Hurricane Center's track right there on the bottom.
Yep.
And then some maybe a little bit better case scenario, maybe the moderate case scenario, and then the worst case scenario.
Yeah. So which one should we start with? Should we start out west, I
Yeah,
guess?
let's start there.
Okay, so again, this is the western edge of the track. So here we're looking at threats, heavy rain, isolated tornadoes, which we talked about if we had if it moved inland or more inland. Then we've got kind of worst case scenario where we get the most impacts. So hurricane gusts, tropical storm force winds that would be sustained, minor surge, and we're talking about the storm surge.
That's that line where we said coming in off the ocean here, we'd be getting the surge.
Right, right. So north of the center is where we're going to get the surge. Again, once we have a better idea for where that landfall may be, then we'll know areas that will get the worst of the surge.
Exactly.
And as we have a better idea of what category it is too, then we can tell people, here's what kind of surge we're expecting, here's how many feet. Right. Because that's how the Saffir-Simpson scale is ranked. And the winds, storm surge.
The weaker the storm, then obviously the lower the surge. Right. However, like we saw with Superstorm Sandy, it generated that huge swell and the storm weakened, but it was such a massive storm, it still moved all that water on shore.
So that's something we're going to have to watch. If it goes from a, depending on the landfall, but if it weakens kind of quickly, like you said, it's not going to have time for that surge to shrink down.
Right.
So that's something we'll have to watch. With this kind of worst case scenario, we're still looking at tornadoes, possibly some heavy rain. And here in the green, kind of the best case scenario for us. So this is the eastern edge of the track. Again, we're still going to get some rain. You don't typically get as much rain on the western edge of the storm. Again, the northeast quadrant, we kind of talked about this yesterday. I guess we can talk more about that. Some wind and some beach erosion. And I like how you keep bringing up Irene. Yeah. We thought we were going to get a direct hit from Irene. Yes. That was August 2011. Yes. Actually started early because Irene was coming.
That's right.
So we thought we were going to get a direct hit, and then it just ended up brushing. Yep. But I mean, Folly Beach, the county park there, just gone for years.
Yeah. I believe about a year and a half, 2 years to rebuild that. Right. Now, somebody also asked about the tornado threat. Both of these two tracks would give us a tornado threat.
If it's off to our west. And that's because we're in that northeast quadrant. So think about, here's kind of the center of the storm where my Fitbit is. And so this is the northeast quadrant right there. Yep. So that's where we look at the biggest tornado threat. And the storm surge. Again, at that northeast quadrant, that's where it's the worst.
So none of these are good. None of these are good at all. No. And no matter where it goes, we're going to feel the impacts.
And the southeastern United States is going to feel impacts.
Yep. And the things that we do know about Irma, obviously it's a major hurricane, Category 5. It's going to take that northerly turn. We have the cone in the low country, and the impacts are expected. As far as the timing on this storm, late Sunday, but I'm thinking more so Monday into Tuesday, especially if some of the more recent computer models pan out and it goes over Florida. The friction of it moving across land will just slow it down.
Right, right. Yeah, so I'm definitely thinking Monday into maybe even early Tuesday. Yeah. But I definitely think, and we're going to see those winds picking up. We kind of talked about this during some of the shows, but that pressure gradient. So we've got Irma to the south, high pressure off to the north. So that's kind of just squeezing out those winds. Yes. And so, I mean, it's even going to be a little bit breezy out there tomorrow.
Starting tomorrow and especially Saturday and Sunday.
Saturday, but really Sunday. Yes. So that will be in association with Irma as we head into Sunday.
You want to go through what we don't know?
All right, so we don't know the exact timing of the turn, although we do think it's probably going to be on Saturday. Therefore, we don't know the exact track. But once we get an idea of that turn, I think we're going to see that cone starting to narrow. We'll have a better idea. Don't know the future intensity because we don't know how much interaction it's going to have with land, because obviously that's going to help to weaken it. And we don't know the degree of the impacts, but we know we're going to get the impacts. We just don't know where the worst impacts will be. And that's where we go back to those 3 scenarios that we just talked about.
And we have time to figure it out because
we still have time. We still have time to prepare. Yeah. I went home and I thought, oh, we have to move all the stuff off the porch. And then I thought, no, we've got the generator, we've got our supply kit. Yep. I'm starting to pack up stuff for the kids in case they leave. Right. But, taking stuff off the porch, we still have time to do that. I'm going to be here. We still have time to do that.
Make a list.
Yep.
Check it off. Check it off.
Now, there's nothing like checking off a list. I like being like, oh, I got this.
You do.
I'm a list girl.
Are. Now, Brian,
but that's what you need to do, so you make sure you've done everything. You're right.
Brian had a question about something about riding out the storm. What was that, Brian? essential item for riding out the storm, water.
Water?
Water is probably
and they
the
say a
biggest.
gallon for one person
per day.
per day.
Yeah, yeah.
So at least 3 gallons for one person.
Yeah, because
you need to plan on about 3 days.
And
I mean, you just don't know.
You can go without food. You can go without food for a couple days, but you don't want to.
Well, you don't want to.
You don't want to be without electricity,
it's easy,
first of all.
But it's easy to have,
granola bars.
Granola bars.
Anything.
Something, a lot of cans have those.
Sure.
You don't even need a can opener. Even if it's canned fruit, canned tuna. You're not a fan of canned tuna, but
we grew up on peanut butter and jelly
cereal,
sandwiches.
Yeah, peanut butter.
Yeah. So
I never understood why people went and bought milk.
Right, because that can spoil.
Yeah, I never
Milk
understood
and eggs,
that.
they're perishable.
I mean, bread is a given.
Right.
I mean, you can just eat a bunch of bread. But, yeah, food, water, medicine.
Yes.
If you need medicine, that's...
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So, and that goes into what we've got here. To be prepared for Irma, your family plan, have your supply kit all stocked. Now is a good time to have that done, and that way you can get out the next couple of days, and like Sonya said, move around your lawn furniture. I saw today was garbage day.
Trash, yeah.
And bring those trash cans in. If you can't get them inside the house, make sure to secure them.
Secure them.
Tie them down
to
because
a tree
those
or to
can
the
get
fence
blown
or
around.
something. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Recycling bins, same
And
sort of thing.
We haven't heard too much of this, and I think especially today, folks calmed down a little. They said, okay, this storm is coming. We need to take a deep breath. Yesterday, there were some folks that were pretty uptight. And,
right. And when you're frantic, I mean, it just does nobody any good.
So be nice to your brothers and sisters out there. Keep calm. We're all in this together, and we have some time to wait it out. So do we have any more graphics, or is this the last one?
This is the last one.
So this is the last one.
Unless we have any more questions, I guess.
Yeah. And
but yeah, like you said, we've got time. Just make your list, know what you need to do, know what your plan is.
Yep.
I mean, it's as basic as that.
Oh, okay. We had a question, why is the model changing so often? They change every 6 hours. And we're going to continue to see that. We're talking about all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. So they're going to continue to change. And that's why we tell you to focus on the trend of those models, not run to run, just little jumps here and there.
That's right. And you and I are kind of a big fan of the 12Z run and the 00Z run. We look at the other runs, but those are the main runs that we like to look at.
Well, and the European model only does run twice a day.
Right.
So we only get that information in twice a day. That's every 12 hours.
Yeah. So you and I just looked at the 18Z for the GFS, but again, really like to wait and see how the 00Z looks.
Well, watching the trend. The last 3 runs, trending west.
Right. So will I continue? And then we'll see what the 11 o'clock track looks like tonight from the National Hurricane Center.
Because when we first started this thing last week, you remember the GFS model had Irma off the coast of North Carolina and Virginia in the mid-Atlantic, and then about 1,200 miles away over top of Key West, that's where the European model
so it was over
at the same time.
Over 1,000 miles apart.
Yeah. So
and look at how much things have changed within the 5 days.
Yeah.
And we're still 4 or 5 days out.
Hasn't made the turn. And we're constantly getting more weather data into the computer models. When it gets over top of the United States or close to the United States, we can get a better feel of the environment around the storm. The weather service.
And the hurricane hunters are still flying into it very often.
Hurricane hunters into it. The NOAA is flying over it.
Right. And they're dropping those dropsondes and buoys.
And dropsondes. So we're getting a much better read on this storm every single day.
And that's very helpful.
Yeah, and that's why all that information gets sent back to the National Hurricane Center, and that gets shoved into the computer models.
Right. And that's how they come out with the location, the wind speed, and the track.
Well, and even the weather service offices across the United States from the southeast have been sending up weather balloons more frequently to try to sample the environment that Irma is going to be moving into, because that's going to be a big player once it starts to head up the coast of Florida.
Absolutely.
So all of those things are what's changing the computer model, and you have to think.
And we've got those steering.
Yes.
What's steering it? We've got that high out in the Atlantic, that high building in from Canada.
Yes.
So those are all players. And again, it's just like forecasting the weather, although I don't think a lot of people realize what goes into it every day. And we're watching things change, but all eyes are on Irma now. So now they're kind of getting a little taste of what we see every day. The models change all the time.
Well, and just like your swimming pool is filled with water, that's a fluid. What's around the Earth is a fluid. It's not concrete. When you push it, it doesn't move like a brick. When you push something in the atmosphere, you get little ripples all over the place. It's like me doing a cannonball into your pool. I can't tell you where that wave is going to end up in the pool, but there's going to be ripples all over the place, and that's exactly what we're dealing with. Not on the scale of a swimming pool where I can't tell you where a little wave is going to be, the entire world. So it's not an easy job, and it is a guessing game, and we make a hypothesis every day, and I'd say we're pretty darn good at it.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's what we dedicate ourselves to, and that's why we constantly watch it.
Yeah, and we are constantly watching it, you know, on a regular basis, but now especially, you know, it's like looking under a microscope.
Yeah.
You know, because we know people are making decisions based on what we're saying.
Exactly.
And believe me, we are watching it closely because, you know, we have to tell our family members. And our friends. I mean, you've worked here a long time. I mean, you've been here, what, 11 years?
Thanks, Sonya.
Well, you know what I mean.
Been in the coastal Carolinas for almost 15 years now, and one of the first years I was here was 2004. It was baptism by fire to tropical weather, and ever since I've been just dialed into it. So it's what we live for. We don't like to see it.
Absolutely. But I think people, you know, they should realize that we're looking at it not only because it's what we love and it's our job, but that our friends and our family are affected by this. You know, I mean,
we're
people.
Affected by it.
Well, we are affected by it, of course. But I'm saying, like, so we have to, you know, we're making these decisions for our family, for our friends.
Absolutely.
You know, I have people I went to school with. You know, my family is all here wondering what to do. So that's why we like to lay all the cards out on the table. And I tell everybody the same thing.
It's not like we're withholding any information.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
there
not.
is no reason.
And we're not only being honest about it, but we're realistic about it. And that's why we say, don't look at each model run separately. You have to look at the trends.
And hope for little victories. The little victory I'm hoping for over the next couple of days.
The weakening.
Little weakening trend, because that's about all we can hope for.
Because that would be best case scenario for everyone. A weaker system is better for everyone.
We don't want to see the first landfalling Category 5 hurricane in over 25 years. Yeah, we don't want to see that. So hopefully we don't, in the United States, that is. So, yeah. Any other questions, Brian? All right. Well, thanks for watching. We're going to keep you up to date all the time. We've got people here watching the storm. Sonya's here, I'm here, Chris will be here, Emily will be here. We've got you covered.
Full team.
So, and we're going to keep you right on up to the storm, through the storm, and after the storm, we'll be here.
And we've added additional newscasts. You know, so we'll be on a Saturday morning, Sunday morning, in addition to our Saturday and Sunday evening.
And all our Facebook Lives.
All our Facebook Lives. Follow our Facebook accounts, our Twitter accounts. So
definitely
have you covered.
So stay safe, get ready for the storm. You have some time, and we hope you have a great Thursday night.
See you later.